Shalom. This week we will conclude the first of the 5 books of Moses. In Hebrew that's called Bereshit. In English, of course, this is the book of Genesis. In this week's Torah portion we read of the death of Jacob, the last of the 3 patriarchs, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And here we read of Jacob's blessings to his sons before he dies. Whenever we conclude a period of time, an event, some kind of era, it's always good to look back and to try to learn, to see where we came from, to see where we're going to. And in this case, there's no difference. Here we have to look back to try to examine what has happened, what has taken place, and what we have waiting for us in the future. And actually it's very, very interesting because we see here towards the end of the Torah portion how Jacob calls his son Joseph and asks him to bring his 2 sons, Ephraim and Menashe, that they should also receive their blessings. Before we see exactly what happened with them, let's look back. Here we have an example coming up of 2 brothers about to receive blessings from their grandfather before his death. What could we expect would happen? So if we look back to the beginning of the book of Genesis, to the beginning of Bereshit, what can we see? We see some very difficult events happening. If we want to study the family unit as it was from the beginning of creation through this very moment, what do we see? We can start following the creation of the first man. He had 2 sons, Cain and Abel, Cain v'Hevel. And we all know what happened with them. They had a fight, and Cain, it's written, killed his brother Abel. Is this brotherly love? This is the way we begin all of creation, with 2 brothers, one killing the other? And where do we go from there? Let's go fast forward to the days of Abraham. Abraham has 2 sons. He has one son whose name is Isaac and the other is Ishmael. There was a tremendous amount of friction between those 2 sons, between those 2 boys. One was very holy and the other had problems. Isaac had 2 sons. One was Jacob and the other was Esau. We know that Jacob develops and keeps going forward. And what happens with Esau? Where did he go? Did he go forward? Did he discover the root of goodness? Or perhaps something else? And if we keep going to the sons of Jacob, he had 12 sons. But we've just finished reading how 10 of those sons thought of killing their brother Joseph, and in the end they threw him into a pit, and in the end he was sold into slavery in Egypt. This is what we see happening throughout all of the book of Genesis, where we see the family love, the brotherly love, the development, the positive development of the family unit. If this is where we started, then we can only imagine where we're going. God forbid. If this is the beginning, what's going to be the end? This is very troublesome. And with this we come to this week's Torah portion, where Jacob has just blessed all of his sons, and now he asks Joseph to bring his 2 sons, Menashe and Ephraim. And as we know, Menashe is the oldest. He's the firstborn. Therefore, he should receive the first blessing, which is usually a richer blessing than the second one. And what does Jacob do? He sees sitting in front of him these 2 men, and instead of putting one hand on Menashe and one hand on Ephraim, it's written that he crossed his hands. And he puts his right hand, the more dominant hand, on the head of Ephraim, the younger of the 2, and he puts his left hand on the hand of Menashe. And that's how he blesses them. And who receives the better of the 2 blessings? Ephraim, and not Menashe. You would ask yourself, from my introduction, from your reading of the book of Genesis, what is going to be the result of this blessing, where the younger receives what seemingly belongs to the oldest, and the oldest receives what seemingly belongs to the youngest? If we look at what happened up until now, the pattern that we see is that probably Ephraim will stick out his tongue and say to Menashe, "Na, na, 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 I got your blessing." And Menashe will start running after Ephraim and at best just try to kick him. But that doesn't happen. That does not happen. Here they both receive their blessings with happiness. They receive what they were given, what they were granted from their grandfather Jacob with happiness and with joy, each accepting what he received, saying, this is what I am supposed to receive. This is the blessing that was meant for me. And as a result of that, every Friday night, when we bless our children, because that is the custom of religious Jews, that on every Friday night, when they come home from the synagogue, and they say Kiddush on the wine, and before washing their hands to have bread, we put our hands on our sons, and we bless them as Ephraim and Menashe. The women, of course, we bless as Sarah and Rivka and Rachel and Leah, Sarah and Rebecca and Rachel and Leah. But the sons are blessed as Ephraim and Menashe. Why? Because they received their blessings, even though it seemed like they were mixed up, and this one received that one's and that one received this one's. They received that with happiness. They were able to hug each other and congratulate each other and say Mazal Tov for what you received. This is the culmination of the book of Genesis. Now you might ask yourselves, how did this happen? How did it happen that finally, at the end of the book of Genesis, finally we see true brotherly love? And I believe that the answer is as follows. This isn't written anyplace where I've never seen it, and you can take it for however you like. We know that the father of Ephraim and Menashe is Joseph. Joseph was the son of Rachel, of Rachel. Who was their mother? Who gave birth to Ephraim and Menashe? Who was Joseph's wife? So it's brought down by our sages that the woman that Joseph married after he was released from prison in Egypt after so many years, his wife was the daughter of Dinah. You remember a few weeks ago we read about Dinah, who was taken by Shechem and who was raped. So she had a daughter, and that daughter eventually left home and she made her way down to Egypt. And that is the woman who was given to Joseph following his release from prison. Who was this woman's mother? Her mother was Dinah, as we've said. And who was Dinah's mother? Who is this woman's grandmother? It was Leah. In other words, within Ephraim and Menashe, we have a unity of Rachel, who was the mother of Joseph, and of Leah, who was Joseph's wife's grandmother. We have the unity of the house of Rachel and of Leah, them coming together, and that unity brings us to the brotherly love of Ephraim and Menashe. And this is very, very significant, because only now, as we'll start to read next week, do we not read about the family of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Now we move into the realm of Am Yisrael, of the Jewish people. When can we reach that pinnacle of not talking about only a family unit, but of a people? When we reach the love, the brotherly love of Ephraim and Menashe. And this is how we conclude the book of Genesis. But there's one other point that I'd like to make before I conclude. Following the blessings we read of Jacob's death, and we read the last words that he says to his sons before he passes away. And here we read at the end of the book of Genesis, V'yitzav otam v'yomar alehem, and he commanded them and he said to them, I am now leaving, I am being gathered to my people. Please bury me with my fathers in the cave, which is in the field of Ephraim the Hittite, B'ma'ara, in the cave, in the field of Machpela, which is to the east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which was purchased by Abraham, the field from Ephraim the Hittite, as our gravesite. Shama kavru et Avraham, there Abraham was buried and Sarah his wife. There was buried Isaac and Rivka his wife, and there I buried Leah. Mikneh sadeh u'ma'ara asher bo me'et b'nei Chet, in the field and the cave which was purchased from the people of Chet. The last words that Jacob says before he dies, his last request, his last command to his sons, is that he should be taken from Egypt and he should be brought back here to Hebron. That he should be buried in the cave of Machpela, together with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Sarah and Rebekah and Leah. Why? Why does Jacob, in his last words before passing on, this huge man, this patriarch, the father of the Jewish people, why are his last words dealing with Marat Machpela? Because he understands the holiness, the sanctity, the significance of this very, very special place. And he there also wants that should be his final resting place. That all of the patriarchs and the matriarchs, excluding, of course, Rachel, who was buried down the road in Bethlehem, they should all be in one place for eternity. And that place, Ma'arat Machpela, the caves of Machpela, here in Hebron, just down the road from here, 5 minutes. This will take us into the book of Exodus, the book of Shmot, where then we will read not about the family of Jacob, but we will read about Am Yisrael, the Jewish people. Thank you very much. Shalom.